Hello, my name is Dr. Lynda Ulrich, founder of Ever Widening Circles, a global endeavor to change the negative dialogue about our times. And in the course of my work for Ever Widening Circles, I speak to thought leaders all over the world who I know has something to bring to our complex situation right now. I'm going to speak to one of those thought leaders today, Lynda Cliatt-Wayman, who is best known for her extraordinary TED Talk. Her TED Talk's called How to Fix a Broken School, Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard. And that's a very good synopsis of what Lynda has to share with us today. Lynda turned around one of the most dangerous high schools in America, and she has a recipe for success that we can apply to these complex times. And I think it's imperative that the world learn about her insights right now. So Lynda, welcome.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy to talk to you and really get to explore all the things that you might bring to our current situation to get us moving in the right direction. Give us an introduction of your work and your rigorous experience that might be relevant to our times right now.
Well, I have been a lifelong educator. I have been a principal for 20 years. A principal, a teacher, and assistant superintendent for high schools in all urban schools in Philadelphia and in Camden. And 100% of my students have always been African American. And I have worked in around 3 different persistently dangerous schools were labeled persistently dangerous. And usually when I took over those schools were low performing and high violence. And that's why they were labeled persistently dangerous school, because of the amount of violence on the teachers, assaults on staff, and students alike. So I bring a unique position to this entire conversation because I understand why there's so much pain around so much young people today, especially young people of color.
So let's get started. Let's talk about acknowledgement.
I always use a school context for my analogies in the situation, because I think people really can understand it better. When I took over my last persistently dangerous school, it was something that I had never seen before. The amount of violence within this particular school, kids were fighting every other day. There was absolutely no learning going on. It looked like a war zone. And I said to myself, what in the world is going on in this particular school? So what I used to do, I would call town hall meetings, and people would tell me when I first started, oh, Ms. Wayman, please do not put all of those children in the auditorium together. They can't sit in there together. And I said to them, well, they're going to have to. And so we put them all in the auditorium. And after just looking at the rage in their eyes, I just stood there, listened to their pain, let them scream and holler. And then I acknowledged to them that the system has been broken for so many years. So many people have failed you along the way. And then after that acknowledgement, I quickly went into apologizing. Now, did I cause this violence? Did I cause this upheaval in this particular school? No, I did not. I was in a position where the only thing I could do was apologize to move forward. So again, I acknowledged that the system was broken against them. And then you could see them at least hush and be quiet a little bit at the apology, trying to figure out, is she sincere in the apology? At least she admitted that it was a problem. She apologized, and then I opened the conversation up for dialogue. Everything, Linda, even all of this that's going on today in the streets, as white Americans, you have to acknowledge that there has been 2 Americas. You first have to see that and acknowledge that to even move forward. No, you may not have had anything to do with it in particularly, but apologize for understanding that it exists. And then after that, figure out the way forward. And for me, the way forward was courageous conversations and listening and then acting.
That's the recipe for now, isn't it?
Yes.
Courageous conversations, listening, and then acting.
Unfortunately, Linda, in this country, a lot of people have never used that formula for moving forward. That's the problem. We've never really listened and had courageous conversations when things were calm. When things were calm, we never really listened to them. And so what happens when you don't listen in calm, kids force or people force you to listen. Unfortunately, in some situations, it had as a result of violence. But most of these protests have been peaceful. But because of the sheer volume of noise, the sheer volume of outrage, the multicultural outrage, it is finally saying, listen to us. We have a story to tell you. And it is an important story to tell you. And if you just listen to us and acknowledge that this is wrong and that we have to fix it in some way. Now, we know everything is not going to be perfect, but we don't have a way forward if we can't get the people who were sent in this society to protect us. And so what happens? A horrible situation happens. A man has to die, and the world has to witness a man, a grown man, laying on the ground for 8 minutes and 47 seconds with a knee in somebody's neck, calling for his dead mother for somebody to listen. Of course, mothers play a huge role in this.
Huge.
As mothers, all children want the love of their mother. All children, and respect of their mother. So what we as mothers, what we have to do, we have to sit our children down and we have to let them know that you're going to meet people who look different than you, who sound different than you, but they have a valid story. We all want the best for our children, no matter who we are. And if we teach young children that now, then I think we have a way forward in the future. But the bottom line is, Linda, it starts with listening. It starts with courageous conversation.
Now, I want you to help us even break that down just a little bit further.
Okay.
You know, one of the things I've noticed is there's two kinds of listening. There's listening to understand and listening to get ready to say what you want to say next. So I think this listening to understand is a really important nuance to this dialogue. And it's going to be incumbent on us all not to be doing that listening to get ready to say our point next. Give me an example of how that worked for you, because I'm sure you had to walk that tightrope many, many times when you just were desperate to say something, but you had to listen to understand first.
Let me tell you this one quick story, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we were really trying to get our hands around the violence. And we brought some people in to have a conversation with the young people about this violence and how we had to stop it. And during this particular program, they were showing some really violent scenes to try to get their point across, even though it's supposed to be a non-violent assembly. And they were showing violent scenes. And what we realized was that, wait a minute, we were very upset about what we were seeing, but it had no effect on the children. And we could not understand why it had no effect on them. So we actually gathered some young people together and we said, why is this not having any effect on you? And one girl said, oh, Miss Wayman, come on. We see that every night on the streets where we live. We don't hope, we don't dream, because we know nothing is going to change. Now, even though that wasn't really what the context of it was, for me and my staff, we started to say to ourselves, oh, we have to listen for what they're not saying.
This is huge.
For what they're not saying, by their body language, by looking at what they do, you say, oh, because they had difficulty communicating really how they feel. So we had to start piecing together, oh, wait a minute. They said they don't have any hope. They said they don't dream. Oh my God. No wonder there's so much violence. Hopelessness. And then we started to build a school around building hope for children. And that's when it started to turn around. So it is that active listening. It is waiting to hear fully what they had to say and act. And then it's reading between the lines of what they are not actually saying. And that's happening sometime in the street today.
With George Floyd's death being caught on video, is that I would imagine that people with all kinds of life experiences can relate to the unifying core of what's wrong in that video. I think it crosses all lines of color and culture and generations. There's something going on there that brings us all, that gets to the core of what we all have in common.
Linda, it all started with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And you can believe what you want to believe in the spiritual realm of things. You can believe that. Some people believe things. But it is a time where we were all sitting still. We were sitting still. We had no schedules. We had nowhere to go. We had nowhere to be. And so therefore, now that all of you are sitting down with no schedule, let me show you something. And that 17-year-old girl, saying the same thing I said about young people, stood there for 9 minutes and took that video. And that video aired for all of us to see. His last breath, Linda, was mama, mama. Because you know why? Because she was calling him home. The ills of the world was already done for him. Was already done. And we know that because of the coroner report. He was dead after 3 minutes. And for the rest of the time, his knee was on his neck and George had already went off to be with somebody, his mother, who could see him. And so until we start understanding that we want what you want, that we actually want what everybody else wants, we're not asking for anything else. We just want to be seen. We want to be heard. And we want you all to understand that nothing out here is level. Nothing out here is fair. Not education, not healthcare. Nothing is just fair. All we want is for you to acknowledge that it's not fair and try to make the system more fair so that we can actually breathe. That's all.
No, this is part of going forward, is getting to some grounding level. It's like falling through water. Sometimes you just have to let yourself go down through the depths of the water so your feet touch the bottom and you can push off. And I believe that's where we are with this. What I've been noticing, and again, I'm gonna be vulnerable here. I've been noticing that a lot of people are struggling with just what to say. How do we open conversations? Can we talk a few minutes here about some like practical advice about how we start those hard conversations?
I know how I started with my own particular children is that we gather in a space in the house. We just gather. And they may see something and they go, Mom, look at this. And so what I try to do with them is to clarify what it is that they're saying. And I also acknowledge, going back to the acknowledge word again, how they see it. First, you have to acknowledge with your family member, your child, or the community. How do you individually see that? Because we all see things different, right? So what do you see? Talk about, listen to what they're saying. Then you see this, you see this, and I see that. And then once we see that, what I even do with my own children and my community of school, I would say, but that may be how you see it on the onset. But let me give you some history about what you are looking at, some context about what's going on. So I give them a small history lesson. right? This is, this, and then my children do the same thing for me. And they'll tell me, no, mom, that's not how it really is. And I go, really? And so they change my thinking.
You said that you go to bed at night since seeing that video, and you think of your own children or yourself just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and how that is so real and likely it seems, maybe it's likely, maybe it's not, but it's top of mind so much that our brain translates that to likeliness, right? Over and over and over again. And I have to say, I don't think white people think of that every time.
If we can just acknowledge that, it's something to acknowledge. We're having nightmares, Linda. Nightmares about where do we go from here? If this doesn't change the consciousness of white America, what will? What actually will do it? We don't even know. We can't even think about the possibility of that. If you can't understand, we watched a murder, Linda.
Yes, we did.
We watched a murder.
Yes.
In full view.
How do we have these conversations when we are absolutely probably on the same page about our heartfelt interest to see this thing improve?
Well, I used to tell this story a long time ago, when I would speak to all white audiences, and I would have an honest. The one thing that I would always say to them, something really simple that you could do that would break down barriers. And the one thing was, when you see an African American person, and we're talking about men at the time, we're talking about African American boys. And I said, I want you to do me a favor. When you walk by an African American boy, say hello. Just hello. And see what happens. They're actually stunned that you said hello, to the point they almost choke on their own self. I said, just that simple gesture of acknowledging that you see them. And then one step after that, I know a lot of my friends have been doing with me, just sending me a simple message or text. How are you? Are you okay? Understanding that I may not be able to do anything else in that moment, but you're my friend. I know you. I just want to make sure you're okay. So these are real simple things, Linda, but I think it's going to take simple things for us to get to the big things. That's when someone will say, I'm doing pretty good. Or, I got some things on my mind. And then the next person go, you know what, I do too. And that's the way the dialogue begins.
Yes.
That's the way the dialogue begins.
If you could wave a magic wand and say, okay, America, let's do this first. And then once we get our feet underneath it, then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. What would it be?
The first thing that America needs to do is acknowledge the problem. It's real, right? Just like a poll they did this morning, Americans finally realized that a death of a Black man is not an isolated incident. The poll came out that most Americans now say, oh, there's a systemic problem. So right now we're on the right track.
Okay,
because
good.
According to the poll, it's turned that, okay, there is a problem here. That's step one, so good for that. Okay. The next step is to come out, which always worked for me, even though you may not have done anything to do, apologize for the ills of the world. Let me just start by saying I'm sorry. Sorry, right? Get young people in a place and have a town hall meeting with young people. Mm-hmm. And then have town hall meetings. And I mean town halls of all races, right? Mm-hmm. You may want to separate them out first, then bring them all together and have town halls. And then have this listening of each other. And then after you get finished listening and everybody take notes, okay, this is what we hear. This is what we don't hear. This is what we think is happening. We come up with a step-by-step plan towards some vision. Okay. This is what we're saying we're going to go after step by step. Now, first, before we do that, We're going to do some of the low-hanging things that will get people to begin to trust us. We're going to do some low-hanging things, right? We're going to get a little bit of reform, a no chokehold policy, right? So if we're going to start one thing across all 50 states, we can get unified that you should not put people in a chokehold, if nothing else. If we abolish that one thing, Linda, then people will go, oh, okay, they heard us on that, right? Then you start going for the thing that people are still maybe in disagreement about, right? Step by step by step. We can't change the whole system at one time. That's not reasonable to believe we can do that. But we can start somewhere by acknowledging there is a problem, that I apologize for the ills of the world, that we created a vision for a brighter future, and that we move step by step by step by step to achieving that vision for all Americans. And we can start by seeing each other and understanding we all have one goal: to pass this world better than we have it to our children, all of our children, Black, white, and brown, everyone.
I think that you've got us on a path to success. I hope that as the days and weeks roll by, you can continue to improve our way of thinking, and that's what we've all got to be open to right now. All right, thank you so much, my friend. This has been an absolute. It's been a goosebump experience, and I can't thank you enough for sharing with us. And we'll see where this dialogue goes after today.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's been my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.